Hello, Laurel Houston here. We're going to wait for people to jump on. We were having some technical difficulties, so we'll see if I can get some people to jump back on here while I make you a visual. We are going to be talking about noses and money. Width equals what? Okay, so, okay, Natasha came back. Is the sound better, Tasha? Natasha? No, you go by Tasha. I can call you Tasha. Cool. Okay, I put in my headset and I turned off the heater. So hopefully between those two things, this will work. You can hear me. Beautiful. Okay, so with noses, I started drawing pictures while I was waiting for everything to catch back up. So with your nose, there is 3 different things that we look at. We look at length, we look at width, and we look at the shape. So I'm drawing noses on my paper over here. Now, I will tell you right now, one of the reasons why I don't usually write words during my live videos is because I'm not very good at spelling. So if you're going to come on my live calls and I'm going to have visual aids, if you try to correct my spelling for me, don't. Just spell it right in your own notes because I'm writing and talking and I'm not a great speller. So write a new story about how important that is to you because it's not important to me. That's why I draw pictures. So that is, you guys are laughing at me now. Okay, so I have pictures that I'm drawing while I'm talking here, and I will go over those measurements one in just a second. So with a nose, you have the length, you have the width, and thank you for coming back for those of you that were on and couldn't hear me. I do appreciate that. I was trying to draw the pictures before it brought me back up, but I didn't draw fast enough. So give me just a second and I'll finish drawing my pictures. And they won't make much sense to you yet, but just give me a minute. Okay, so the measurements about noses. Don't get, so with your nose, if you pinch from corner to corner in your eye, and then you go from nostril to nostril. So if when you go from corner to corner, if you just barely kind of are touching lightly, your nose is proportionate. If you cut off your airway, your nose is wide because your nostrils are wider than your eye. And if when you touch, like if my eye was actually that wide and I went to touch and I didn't touch my nose, then my nose would be narrow. And so that is what you're looking for because we're going to do length, width, and then shape. So if your nose is proportionate, meaning when you touch your eye, you also just touch the sides of your nose, versus you cut off, which would mean your nose is wide, versus you didn't touch at all, meaning your nose is narrow. So just kind of make a note of that. So then with length, if you take that same corner to corner and you go from the bridge of your nose, so where it goes from hard to soft, to the tip, that should be the same as the width or the same as your eye. So from the bridge to the tip, so if when you measure from the bridge, if your thumb, hits up here, then your nose is long. Or if you go from the tip and you're like, oh, my nose ended before my space did, then you have a short nose. So are you long, are you proportionate, or are you short? The reason this matters in body mapping, the length of your nose is how much time you need to make a decision. So the longer your nose, the longer the time you want to take before you decide. The width, so from edge to edge, is what you will spend your money on. So I need to do a quick clarification because your nose as a whole isn't just about money. Your nose is about what you value. And what I mean by that is not everyone values money. I'm using money as an example because we live in a society where in order to get what you want, you usually have to purchase it. Um, but I'm someone who values time. Don't waste my time. I can make more money. I cannot create more time. I can manage my time. I can prioritize my time, but I cannot make more time. So if you are someone who values relationships or connections, it affects your nose. And so I'm going to use money as the word throughout, but this also is with relationships. This is with time. So it has to do with the things you value. So one of the very first things with um, body mapping is all about proportions. And so when you are in proportion versus out of proportion, it's not good or bad or right or wrong. It just is. What you then do with it is what's far more important. And so this isn't I always have you find your size and your shape before I tell you what any of them mean. Because so many people are like, oh, I want that trait. No, that's not what this is about. Because there is a certain nose that's just extremely generous. There's another nose that's always very to the point. Their relationships have a point. Everything they do with their time has a point. Their money has a point. Can you guess what type of nose that is? It's the type of nose that comes to a point. So the pointier your nose, the more to the point you spend on the things that you value, whether that's time or relationship or money. So the biggest reason why I started teaching people about noses is this. When you share a bank account with someone, when you share time constraints with someone, when you share things you value with other people, if you understand what you are and what they are, you can avoid fights. How many of you want less fighting in your relationship when it comes to money or time? Okay, that's what I'm going to teach you. And if you have a bump in the bridge of your nose because you've broken it 5 times, oh, you mean like this one that I have right here? That if I break my nose again, I'll have to have plastic surgery? We'll get to that. Um, the other things with noses, like I have a crooked nose. I purposefully wore my hair up today because a lot of people don't notice that my nose is crooked until I point it out. But when I wear my hair up, you can see that it goes to the side. So you can see it comes like it's crooked. I've broken my nose so many times. So someone was asking about getting a nose job or something like that. And I briefly talked about this on the breast video. Is it restoration or is it rejection? So if I used to have a straight nose, and from horseback riding and snowboarding and just sheer klutziness as a child, I've broken my nose several times. And so if I were to find a picture of my nose when it was straight and say, can you give me this back? That is restorative um, surgery. And that has a very different meaning behind it from I got in a car accident, I broke my nose, they tell me I have to have plastic surgery, and I pick a new one. And I say, cool, can you give me this nose instead since you're doing it anyways? Because that's a rejection. So when you are thinking of restoration versus rejection when it comes to surgery, be it a nose job, a boob job, anything like that, are you restoring it back to what it was, or are you rejecting it and wanting something new? Because that is your own personal choice. But I definitely tend to cheer you on for restoration and invite you to think a little bit harder about rejection. Um, because your nose and your ear, actually every part of your body continues to change until the day you die, except your eyeball, your actual eyeball. A child who has a normal 40-week gestation, from the moment that they are born until the moment that they die, your actual eyeball never changes size. It's the only part of your body that doesn't continue to grow. So your ears can change, your nose can change as you progress through life and you consciously take on different characteristics. You can physically change as well, be that through tissue softening or hardening to help change the shape of what it is you are wanting. So just take that into consideration as we think about these things, because the more heart-centered I get, the more my nose is changing from a square nose to a heart-shaped nose. So, and I'll get to those in just a second. Um, there is a reason why people change themselves, and it's because they don't love what they have. Yep, it breaks my heart. And when I hear of name changes, yeah. And so that is this. Like, that's one of the reasons why I started teaching body mapping, is so that people can, I call it look from neutral. So instead of saying this about me is good or bad or right or wrong, this about me is. Just start there. Like, when people go into their body love journey, they think that they have to go from hating and despising a part of themselves to loving it. Well, what about just being neutral about it? Just getting to the point that you can say, it is this. And then I accept it. And then you can love it. Like, it's not an on or off switch. Think of it as a dimmer switch. There's levels there. And it's interesting that this comes up with noses, because did you know that in the United States, aside from breast implants, nose jobs are the second most done plastic surgery? So some of it is restoration and some of it is rejection. But yeah, aside from boobs, the next thing that most people want to change about themselves is their nose. And it's because it's all about value. So the length of your nose is how much time you need to be able to think through whether or not you're going to spend on that. So whether it's time or money, am I willing to spend time on that? Am I willing to spend money on that? If you have a short nose, you make quick yes and no decisions faster. If you have a long nose, you tend to think it through. You find reviews. You want to get comparisons. You are going to look things up. All of those different things. So the longer the nose, the longer the amount of time you need. The shorter the nose, the more of an impulse shopper you are. Now, if your nose is proportionate, it differs to shapes, and we'll get to shapes in just a second. So then the width. If you have a wider nose, you have a wider range of things you will purchase or spend time on, or a wider variety of relationships that you have. If you have a narrow nose, you will buy A, B, and C. And when someone asks you to buy K, depending on the length of your nose, is how much time you'll need to think about it before you decide whether or not you'll do that. So a lot of times people with long, thin noses tend to be seen as selfish or over analytical. And it's not that they're trying to say, well, I have to think about that because it doesn't have value. What they're trying to say is, I need to think about that because I am a person that thinks things through. Everything from what they wear to what they eat to what they spend time and money on. So the longer the nose, the longer you need to think things through. So the measurement for that, Emily, if you take your eye and you go from the tip to the bridge, if your eye fits there, then you're proportionate. So so the length is time, the width is what? So one of the biggest things that I get with the nose and money as we go through this, you have to take into consideration how you were raised. If you were raised in scarcity and poverty, you have a certain mindset that says, think everything through. But once you can clear away that mindset, your truer self comes out. And that's a big part of this. That's a big part of why I teach this, because if you are someone with a short, wide nose, which tells me that generally you're an impulse shopper, and yet your first statement is, oh, I have to think about that. That's programming. Those are not your natural tendencies. That is something you heard your whole life. We have to think about that. I need to ask permission from your other parent about that. Those are things that are programming, not necessarily features or traits of you. So if it's neither short or long, it's proportionate. And so when we talk about shapes, you just go to the shape. So let's talk about shapes. So these are my awesome noses. Okay, so over here, this would be what a round nose looks like. So you can actually like draw a circle on the tip of their nose. Someone that has a pointed nose. So if you don't know if you have a pointed nose, if when you run your finger to your nose, my nose ends before my fingers come together. And then they actually have like, it's flat right there. People with a pointed nose, it actually looks pointed. The most common nose is this one in the middle. It is a rounded point. So their nose starts to come, it's usually longer and narrower, and you can't draw a full circle on it, but it doesn't come to a point either. It's just kind of a rounded tip. It is the most common nose throughout all cultures and races. It is the nose that most artists draw. Okay, so this one is a square nose. I have a square nose. So my nose is actually flat across the top and it has these two corners on it. So it actually, mine is a square down. So when you draw, it is a square down. Some people have a square up nose. And then the last one over here is a heart. So if you were to draw the like nostrils right here, they would have an actual heart on the tip of their nose. There's usually a dimple on the top of their nose, and that's what makes it look like a heart. Okay, so what these different things tell us. So first, I'm trying to keep the glare off of here. So first, this round one. When people have a round nose, it is a circle is the universal symbol for give and receive, meaning they're extremely generous. Think about how the Santa Claus's nose is always round because he's a universal symbol for giving and generosity. So people that have these cute round noses tend to be people who give and give and give, and they're not so great at receiving. What's mine is yours, what's yours is yours. I'm happy to give you everything I have and more, be it my time, my knowledge, my money. I'm going to give this to you. Now, people that have rounded noses that are like, I'm not generous. If I ask them, did you ever see your parents donate money? And when they did, was it out of, anger and obligation? And yet, as a small child, you're like, oh, why can't we give them money? That was programmed out of you. That doesn't mean you're not naturally generous. So if this doesn't fit with money, how are you with your time? How are you with giving knowledge or expertise or a skill that you're good at? I promise it fits. I've done thousands of these. Okay, so the next one, this point. People that have a pointed nose. These are my saver uppers. So they'll say, I want a dishwasher. So they'll save and save and save and save and save, and then they'll get their dishwasher and all that will go, but they'll have a dishwasher. They pay cash for a lot of stuff, and they also say, oh, I don't have any money. And you're like, you don't have money to come to lunch with me? And they're like, no, I don't have any money. What they actually are saying is, I don't have money I'm willing to spend on that. They always have money because their money has a point. So just like with the circle, they're extremely generous. They always, whether they have enough for themselves or not, they are willing to give. People that have a pointed nose, would you post pictures of actual noses after the live? Yeah. So I have them, I can post pictures. So when noses come to a point, their money comes to a point. They are someone who is really good with a budget and they stick to it. They like line items. They like to set financial goals. So the rounded nose, or the nose that's a rounded point, it's a combination of those two. They're generous to a point. They plan their generosity. So they have a budget, and one of their budget items is money, generosity, giveaway. Now, this is different for people who have been raised that you have a financial obligation that you pay to charity anytime you get money. So most religions pay a tithe. And for some religions, that is a collection plate that goes around. And for some, it's every time you get something, you give 10% to your church. Did you actually know that the word tithe means 10% in Latin? Squirrel. Okay. So I'm talking about though, like, that no matter what you're doing, a portion of your money, a portion of your time, a portion of your knowledge, you're going to give to charity. That's just instinctive in you. No one had to teach it to you. That's just something that you're really good at doing. Then we have, and I will actually go through and tell you why each of these noses get stuffy because it's different for each one. Then you have a square nose, which is mine. And there's 2 points. It's flat across the top. So square noses love things to be balanced, meaning I always know how much is in my bank account and I always know how much is going in and coming out. The negative or opposite side of this coin is if I have this much income, I can have this much debt. I'm very good at keeping them balanced. How this shows up in time or relationships. If my husband spends $100 on something, my immediate gut reaction is, well, what do I get to spend $100 on? If my husband has a guy's night, my gut reaction is, well, when do I get a girl's night? It's all about maintaining balance. Where it gets screwed up is that we confuse equal with fair. We're trying to maintain balance. We're trying to say, you got this, and so to make it feel good and right and balanced, I want something like that too. But fair isn't always equal, and equal isn't always fair. And I might actually do a separate video on that because it's a pretty big concept. But what we're trying to get is balance. We're trying to say, if I spent this much time doing work, then I want to spend this much time doing play. If I spend this much time with this child, I want to spend this much time with this child. And so the square nose is actually the most prone to get stuck in mommy shame because, oh my gosh, I spent so much time working, or oh my gosh, I spent so much time with that child and neglected this one, because we want everything to be the same for each person. And it doesn't usually happen. Okay, so then you have the heart-shaped nose, which is everything's backwards for me, which is this one right here. So the heart-shaped nose, their money decisions are all based on feelings. They're the people that when they shop, they have to touch everything and they hold it and they stare at it and they say things like, oh, this just feels right. And they have a lot of things in their house that you're like, why do you have this? And they're like, I don't even remember. I just really love it. So it has no sentimental value to them. They just want it. They are the hardest people to buy a present for, but you usually love the presents that they give you because they put so much thought into them. So when you give them a gift that you're like, here's a gift card, they're like, thanks, because it was so impersonal. But you have a pointed nose, and there is a point to that gift card. So that is something that, and they'll give you like, here's this hand sewed nativity set that I created for you after hours and hours of work. And someone with a square nose is like, oh crap, how much time did you spend on this? Because that means that's how much time I have to spend on a gift for you. Like, square nose people are really not good at receiving because they have to make it even. Like, however much you spend, they'll never give a gift first because they want to know how much you gave them. Because if you give them a gift that has more value than what they gave you, they'll probably give you another gift. I know, we're all so screwed up. So yours is a heart-shaped, Mary. I think yours is. I think when I remember meeting you, I remember noticing that. So everything is just very heart-shaped or very fill oriented. How am I going to spend my time? What feels right for my time? What relationships do I have? So from a kind of be aware, not good or bad or right or wrong, but just be aware. The heart-shaped noses tend to be the person that gives more in a relationship. Same with the round nose. They're going to be the people that give a lot in a relationship. And this is what causes stuffiness. So for the heart shape and the round nose, when there is a lack of appreciation, meaning the give and receive cycle halted. when they are not told thank you, or when someone doesn't show as much appreciation as they were hoping, um, or when they stop receiving. When they're like, no, 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 don't give me that compliment. No, 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 don't give me time for free. No, 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 don't give me that gift. They'll get a stuffy nose. So, because their give and receive cycle is off, because the emotions have stopped. So, for heart shaped noses and for circle noses, when the give and receive has stopped, or when they are, the emotional connection isn't there, that's what's going to cause those noses to get stuffy. Um, for a pointed, when their nose comes to a point, and for the pointed with a round tip, because these are people that set a goal and then they save and save and save and save, and then the money's gone. If they are saving up for a washing machine, and they're saving and they're saving and they're saving, and then kid gets in a car accident, so all of these savings go to car accident, and they have to start over, they will tend to have a somewhat stuffy or ruddy nose until they are back to where they were with that goal. So for them, it's when their money process gets interrupted early. Now, before someone says, no, I had a cold. I know a virus causes a cold. Allergies cause itchy, watery eyes. Those are all accurate statements. But when you are mentally, emotionally, and physically in alignment and in good health, you don't get symptomatic. And if you do get symptomatic, they're very short lived. If your body is fighting off an infection, yes, you're going to get a fever. But if you are not full of rage and anger, that fever is very short. So if you are outside and the weather is cold and your nose starts to get stuffy, that symptom matches. So we don't pay attention to it. If you are doing a Zoom call with a loved one and you say, did you get the present I sent you? And they go, yeah, I got it. Thanks. And you're like, oh, for my heart-shaped people. And they're thinking, do you not love it? All of a sudden their nose will get stuffy. Not because they're cold, not because they have a virus, not because of allergy season, because what they were trying to give was not received. So then things get stuffed up. For pointed noses, I'm saving, I'm saving, I'm saving. Before I got what I wanted, I had to spend that money on something else. And until I get that money back, you will have nasal issues, be it stuffy or runny. You will have problems. And once you get back there, all of a sudden you'll miraculously not have a symptom anymore. Okay, so for square noses, because we are always trying to maintain balance, if our credit debt or if our credit card gets to the point that we can't pay it off every month, stuffy nose. If someone wastes our time, stuffy nose. If we waste someone else's time, stuffy nose. If things get out of balance in what we value, that will cause a stuffy nose. Or what if the thing you saved for was no longer available? Exactly. So if you are like, oh, I want this. Okay, I'm going to show you. So we just moved, like are still in the process of unpacking boxes. And I have this shelf right behind me that I've had for like 2 or 3 years. So I thought I was ordering the same shelf, and it's like a foot shorter. But they don't make this one anymore because it was too old. Well, I really like, there's a reason you can't see that one in my videos, because they're not the same height, which means they're not symmetrical, which really messes with me. I have to put that somewhere else, by the way. It bugs me. Um, but if I had a pointed nose, it wouldn't bother me that they were not the same size and shape. It would bother me that I had money set aside for something and now that's been taken away from me. So if you've been planning for a vacation to Disneyland and Disneyland still isn't open, I shouldn't have brought that up. But, and all of a sudden you're like, well, now what am I supposed to do with this money? That will cause a stuffy nose. So yes, if you are saving up and saving up and saving up, and all of a sudden the thing you wanted disappears. And now you have all this money that you don't know what to do with. It starts to play a mind game on you as well as give you a stuffy nose. Okay, runny noses are slightly different. So with stuffy noses, you stopped your ability to receive it because it's either out of balance or it's not available anymore. But stuffy means stuck. Pretty self-explanatory, right? But what if it's running? What if you just have constant nasal drip? That means you are overworking. So when people work too hard, regardless of their nose shape, when we work too hard, our nose will start to run. It means we've done too much, we've gone too far. And so it's trying to release pressure of overworking. Other things I have my notes. So blackheads on the nose. So when I talked about the chin and I talked about acne, I said whiteheads are outer anger. They're anger at the outside world, they're about people around you, people, places, and things that are external. But blackheads are internal. They're your own thoughts, they're your own stories, they're your own programming. The more I clear up my money programming, the more I set boundaries around how and when I spend time with people, places, and things, my nose has naturally cleared up. Now, in the process, people forget that when you release something physically, it has to actually be released. So if you are changing your thoughts about money and all of a sudden you have like a mass breakout, like all of your blackheads come to the surface and they're really easy to pop, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having this like horrible inside whatever. No, if it's coming up and out, it's because it's coming up and out. You're finally releasing it. But have you ever tried to pop a zit, and no matter how much water, pressure, medicine, squeezing, whatever, it won't pop because it's so deep under the surface? It's because you're not ready to actually release it. You're not ready to get rid of it. You're not ready to understand it. So deep, deep blackheads that won't pop, there is still a belief there. There is still a thought process that is very negative, that is full of yuck, because that's what a blackhead is. But if you can go up to your mirror and like just do this and they pop, you're releasing them. Your body, your brain, and your mind all want and your spirit all want to get rid of that quickly and easily. When things pop easy, be it blackheads, whiteheads, it's because you are ready to be done with it. Your body has to release. It's like when you blow your nose and it actually blows versus no matter how hard you blow your nose, it's still stuffy. If you're not ready to release that you are sad that someone didn't receive the gift in the way you were hoping they received that gift, you can blow and blow and blow and blow your nose and it will never come out. Versus when you are like, oh, I am actually really sad that they didn't receive that gift in the way I thought they would, and I'm just going to let myself be sad for a moment. And then I'm going to blow my nose and I will have free airways once again. People talk about releasing, especially when it comes to energy work, as if they can just go, okay, and now that's gone, and now that's gone. And you waving your hand and thinking about releasing isn't actually releasing anything from you. So I just saw I am at my half-hour point. I know you guys have so many questions with this. So post them in there. I might do a second video on noses, but I want to honor the half an hour. So, and apparently there's someone at my door. So I guess that was good timing. Okay, I love you. Post your questions, and I will try to get to as many of them as I can. Thank you, ladies.